morning, everybody. Let's kind of start getting awake for Tuesday. All right, so chapter 8.2. So, 8.2 is going to be dealing with perpetual inventory, but however, we're going to be costing it using the Lifo method. All right, so pretty straightforward. Last in, our first out. Okay, so we've gone over this concept before. Instead of going from the top, we're going from our last batches that we purchased, and we're gonna sell those ones first. Okay, so the equations here are pretty much the same. You're going to have a purchase price, you're going to have a total cost, and you're going to have a cost per item. All right, but this time when we calculate our goods sold, we're going to be using quantity times our total cost. Our cost per item, and we're going to get a total, and pretty much we're going to subtract it out of our inventory. So we've already seen these before. Let's go ahead and move on. So here it's the exact same concept as we learned in FIFO, except instead of using our first batches, we're just going to take from our second batch. So this is the exact identical problem that we looked at in the other PowerPoint, but this time we're going to be calculating it a little differently. So here we recognize that the first thing that we did was we made a purchase of 100 toys at $1.25, and freight cost us $25. So here, same thing, a little worksheet here. We got 100 toys at $1.25, which gives us a total of 125. Plus the $25 gives us 150. And lastly, here we know that it should be $1.50 each. Now that we recognize this is our first batch, we're going to go ahead and highlight that. Okay, so we know that that's our first batch, and we're going to use red. Then the next thing that happened on June 3rd was we sold 55 toys at $5 each. Okay, now because we have only one batch, and one batch we can automatically assume that we're going to be taking out of that batch. It's the only batch that we have. So we're going to go ahead and calculate from here, and we're going to go ahead and pull through, which we know that if we calculate $1.50 at 55, we're going to end up with $82.50. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that we recognize that this transaction has happened, and we will update our first batch to be now 45 items instead of 100, and it's going to be costing at $67.50. So here we originally recognized that our first batch that we had was 100 items. Now we're going to take what we sold, and now our first batch is now remaining at 45. Again, we're at our only first batch, right? But let's go ahead and see what happens when we do our next scenario, which on June 5th, we made another purchase of 100 toys at $1.25 each, and freight was $26. So here, I've already indicated my inventory items. And I've noticed that I know that when I calculate my purchase, it's going to be for 128, plus my freight gives me 154, making it $1.54. Now that I'm dealing with two different batches, I'm going to pick another color. So in this case, I'm picking yellow. Now I have two batches. All right. If I were to sell an item at any given point now, which batch am I going to use? Exactly. I'm going to use the yellow one. Again, pretty straightforward, but let's continue. Now that if I start with the yellow one and I work my way up, okay, so that's what's going to happen here. On June 10, we made another purchase of 100 items at $1.30 and plus freight of $27. So now this time we added another batch. So when we sell items, we're going to be indicating that we're going to be using our third batch, which is going to be batch green batch. All right, and that's our third batch. So we're going to start from green, we're going to make our way to yellow, and then we're going to make our way to red. Okay? The concept of Lifo, now that we are dealing with multiple batches, that is where we're going to be costing out the last ones that we recently purchased. So now we're going to be doing, okay, so on June 12th, we sold 120 items. So let's go ahead and look at our batches. We notice that we have the green batch for 100, and then we're going to go from bottom to top. So now we know that our second batch is going to be the yellow batch that we're going to be calculating. Now let's look at how much we need to sell. We need to sell 120. Oh, look, our green batch is exactly 100. So we can take out 100. And we're only need to take out the remaining of 20 items from batch number 2. So in this case, I'm going to wipe out my green batch right here. And then I'm going to calculate my yellow batch, and I'm going to eliminate 20 items from my yellow batch to update it. Now I only have 80 left remaining in my yellow batch. All right. And now that we calculated the totals here for our cost of goods sold, we also going to go ahead and calculate our totals here. So here, 80 plus 45 gives me a remaining of 125. And now we can go ahead and move forward, right? Pretty straightforward. We've learned this concept again, except now we're calculating it differently. That's all it is. The information is all the same. It's just the way that you're calculating the end result. Okay? All right, any questions in regards to Lifo?
No.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Exactly. We've learned this concept before. This isn't new material. It's the same material. All right, now what happens when we actually have beginning inventory? How does this affect it now this time? All right, so now that we're dealing with on June 15th, we know from the previous one, right? We know that we have a batch of 45 and we have a batch of 80, giving us a total of 125. Now, when we're looking at this on June 15, you have a total of 125 units on hand at costing you 180 at 190.75. Okay. So once we do that, we're going to go ahead and fill in our table, right? So we know that we have our beginning inventory, and it's going to be exactly how you apply it. My red batch is going to be my first batch, and my second batch is going to be my remaining of my yellow batch. So as you can see, we transfer the information across, and this is where we start. Okay. So again, when we have beginning inventory, you're just going to transfer everything, and it's going to continue doing the same process over and over again. It's going to be based on the date that you purchased it for. Okay, so here the red batch, we bought it way in the beginning of the on June 1st, and my yellow batch is later on. Okay, it's going to apply the same way. We're going to take from our yellow batch and then move our way up. Okay, so our first scenario here is going to be on June 18. We sold 90 items, okay, or 90 toys for $5 each. So in this case, we are only taking 90, so we're going to take, we can take our full batch of 80, okay? And we're going to take 10 out of our remaining red batch. So in this case, here, we calculate that the batch for the 80 items, right, we're taking all of it. So we're going to get rid of $123.20. So we're going to wipe that out. And then now we're going to calculate our 10 items at $1.50, which gets you $15. And we're going to eliminate that from our red batch. And we're going to now adjust our inventory to now we have a remaining of 35 of our red batch. So in this case, if we're going to be looking at Lifo in a standpoint, you're always going to have the first batch that you purchase at all times. You're going to always have that at your ending inventory. Okay, always, wherever you start, you're going to always have that. Okay. All right, let's continue on. So then on June 21st, you made another purchase of 100 toys, but this time it's $1.32 and freight is $26. Okay, so in this case, right, 100 times $1.32 gives you 132. Plus our 26 is now going to give us 158. And that's going to give me $1.58. So as we notice, our toys are getting a little more expensive as we go along the lines. So here, now that we know that we have our red batch available and we finish completing our second batch, we need to color code it. And I'm going to choose blue this time. Just because I've already used yellow and I've already used green. Those were from previous batches. I'm going to try to be a little different, but once the next month ends and I don't have those colors anymore, I can go ahead and safely use those colors again. So in this case, I'm going to go and indicate this as the blue batch. Okay. Then, again, on the 25th of June, you made a purchase of 100 toys for $1.35. So here, I've already made my calculations. Okay, so I'm ending up my third and final batch is going to be $1.62, and I'm going to highlight it to be orange. Okay, so now that we have 3 batches, what is going to be our assumption when we start selling our items? We're going to start with the orange batch. Exactly. Wait, what was that? Yes, we're going to start from our orange batch, and we're going to make our way up to our red batch. Okay, pretty straightforward. So the next scenario says on the 27th of June, we sold 120 items, just like the previous example. This time, we're going to be looking in, and we notice that we can go ahead and get rid of our orange batch, and we're going to take 20 out of our blue batch. So we calculate our orange, we eliminate the orange batch, and now we don't have it anymore. Now we're going to be taking 20 out of the blue and calculate that. And once we get rid of that, we now update our inventory because now we have 80 left remaining in our blue batch. Okay. So far, so good. And then lastly, on the 28th of June, you sold additional 65 toys. And then I also want you to make sure to keep in mind on June 30th, you're supposed to have a total of 50 toys remaining. Okay? So now that we're going to calculate our 65, we already know that since we're taking away from our blue batch, right? Because we have 80 remaining. That's going to cover our entire 65. So I already know I'm going to take away from the blue batch. I'm going to calculate that to get me a grand total of 102.70. I'm going to subtract that out. And now my new updated blue batch is going to be 15 items at a total of $23.70. And now that I reached the end of the period, I'm just going to tally up what I have. And now, boom, I have 50 remaining for my 35 from the red and my 15 from the blue. And that's exactly how much I'm supposed to have at the end of the day. Okay. All right. Any questions in regards to this? Because this is pretty straightforward.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, well, that was chapter 8.2 for you guys.